A dog waits by the front door. Its tail begins to wag. The familiar footsteps are getting closer. The door opens. The owner kneels down, calls the dog's name, then walks away. The dog follows. Into the car, into a building it has never seen before. Minutes later, the owner disappears. The dog never sees them again. People watching scenes like this often describe the same emotion. Betrayal. But is that really what the animal experienced? Or are humans placing their own emotions onto a mind that works very differently? The answer begins with an uncomfortable truth. Before an animal can feel betrayed, it must first be capable of trust. And for decades, scientists weren't sure animals truly trusted anyone. They were thought to be creatures of instinct, simple associations, food, fear, reward, nothing more. But modern animal cognition has challenged that picture. Again and again, researchers have found that many animals don't simply react to the world. They build expectations about it. Dogs expect certain people to return home. Elephants remember individuals for years. Crows recognize human faces long after a single encounter. Chimpanzees remember allies and rivals long after conflicts have ended. These aren't random memories. They're social maps. The brain keeps track of who has helped, who has harmed, and who cannot be predicted. Trust begins with prediction. Every relationship is built on one silent assumption. I think I know what you'll do next. Humans constantly make these predictions. So do many social animals. A wolf trusts the rest of its pack to join the hunt. A dolphin expects companions to cooperate. An elephant expects members of its family to protect newborn calves. Without these expectations, social groups would collapse, because cooperation only works if individuals can predict one another. Neuroscientists sometimes describe the brain as a prediction machine. Rather than waiting for events to happen, it constantly guesses what comes next. Most of the time, those predictions are correct. But occasionally, reality breaks the pattern. Imagine reaching for a branch that suddenly snaps, or hearing your name called, only to realize no one is there. The brain immediately notices the mistake. Scientists call this a prediction error. Something expected failed to happen. That same process appears throughout the animal kingdom. Dogs provide one of the clearest examples. In several experiments, researchers have found that dogs respond differently depending on whether a person is unwilling to help them or simply unable. When food is deliberately withheld, dogs often stop seeking assistance from that individual much sooner than when the person appears to be trying but fails. The dog isn't just reacting to food, it's updating its opinion of the human. That requires memory, expectation, and learning. Whether it requires betrayal is another question entirely. Perhaps the most fascinating evidence comes from primates. Among chimpanzees and baboons, long-term alliances determine access to food, mates, and protection. Individuals remember who supported them during conflicts. They also remember who abandoned them. Researchers have documented former allies refusing to cooperate after repeated failures of support. Trust, once broken, can take months to rebuild. No one claims the chimpanzee sits alone thinking, "My friend betrayed me." But its behavior tells another story. Relationships change after expectations are violated. And that is where the science begins to overlap with something humans recognize. Because betrayal may not begin with anger. It may begin with surprise. If broken expectations can change relationships, then memory becomes everything. An animal cannot lose trust if it cannot remember who earned it in the first place. That is why some of the strongest evidence comes from species with remarkable long-term memories. Take crows. In a famous series of studies led by biologist John Marsliff at the University of Washington, researchers wore realistic masks while trapping and briefly handling wild crows. The experience wasn't physically harmful, but it was stressful. Years later, the same masks appeared again. The crows immediately reacted. They sounded alarm calls, mobbed the person, and taught younger crows to fear that face. even though the younger birds had never experienced the event themselves. The crows weren't simply remembering danger, they were remembering who caused it. Their brains had linked a specific individual with a broken expectation of safety. Elephants show something similar on an even larger timescale. Families depend on cooperation to survive. Older females guide herds to water during droughts, defend calves from predators, and recognize friends they may not have seen for years. Field studies by researchers such as Karen McComb have shown that elephants distinguish familiar individuals from strangers using both sight and sound. When trusted companions disappear or behave in unexpected ways, the entire group's behavior can change. The relationships themselves matter, not just the immediate outcome. Dolphins offer another clue. Many species hunt together using carefully timed cooperation. One dolphin drives fish toward the surface. Another waits below. If one repeatedly refuses to cooperate while still benefiting from the group's effort, the partnership often breaks down. Marine biologists have observed dolphins changing partners over time, favoring individuals that reliably cooperate. Trust, it seems, is constantly being updated, not with words, but with experience. This idea appears across the animal kingdom. Wolves rely on pack members during hunts. Vampire bats share blood meals with unrelated individuals that have helped them in the past. Primates groom those who have supported them and become less willing to cooperate after repeated negative interactions. Again and again, animals behave as though they are keeping score, not out of revenge, but because remembering reliable partners increases the chances of survival. This is where scientists become careful with language. Betrayal is a deeply human word. It usually involves intention. We believe someone knew our expectations, understood our trust, and chose to violate it. Proving that level of understanding in another species is extraordinarily difficult. What researchers can demonstrate is something slightly different. Many animals form expectations about individuals. They remember past interactions. They adjust future behavior when those expectations are broken. Whether the emotional experience feels like what humans call betrayal, no experiment can answer. At least not yet. But neuroscience offers an interesting clue. Across mammals, the brain is constantly comparing what it expected with what actually happened. When those two don't match, networks involved in learning and decision-making become active, updating future behavior. The exact structures vary between species, but the principle is remarkably similar. A world that becomes unpredictable is a dangerous one. So evolution favored brains that notice when trust no longer pays off. Perhaps this is why social intelligence evolved alongside cooperation. The more an animal depends on others, the more valuable it becomes to remember who can be relied upon. In that sense, broken trust isn't just emotional. It's practical. A wolf that follows an unreliable hunting partner may go hungry. A chimpanzee abandoned during a conflict may suffer serious injuries. A bat that repeatedly shares food without receiving help in return wastes precious energy. For social animals, relationships can be just as important as strength or speed. And relationships depend on predictability. So, can animals feel betrayal? Science cannot say for certain. No researcher can look into a crow's mind or a dog's thoughts and measure betrayal itself, but the evidence shows something undeniably close. Animals remember. They build trust. They notice when expectations are broken, and they change their behavior because of it. Perhaps betrayal is not a single emotion. Perhaps it begins much earlier, with a brain realizing that someone it depended on is no longer behaving the way it once did. If that's true, then the roots of betrayal may not belong only to humans. They may have begun millions of years ago. The moment social animals first learned that survival sometimes depends, not only on recognizing friends, but on knowing when a friend can no longer be trusted.